I have watched and reacted to several seasons of Love is Blind, and there have been moments when I have felt moved, even tears brought to my eyes, but this moment that I just showed you, seeing the impact of such an abrupt, unexpected rejection, moved me to tears. Heartbreak is challenging on its own. However, what struck me here is that this may not have been only about a hopeful connection ending. So today I want to talk about why unexpected, abrupt heartbreak can be so devastating, and why this moment may have touched something much deeper underneath the heartbreak itself for Fabian. And then I'm going to wrap this video up by sharing the conclusion that Fabian seems to have drawn from this painful experience, and the conclusion that I wish that he would hold on to instead. Hi, I'm Dr. Pam, therapist and relationship counselor, and I am really so happy that you're here, whether you've been with me for a while or this is your first time finding my channel. Welcome. This is a space where we look more deeply at ourselves and our relationships and our patterns, and if that is something that you would like more of, I'd love for you to connect and join us. And just as a reminder, I know that this is reality TV and it is heavily edited. Also, it's important to say that I am not diagnosing anyone. I always like to say that tells you very little about a person. I am just using what we are shown so that we can explore emotional dynamics, patterns, and relationship challenges that may help you reflect and grow for yourself and your relationships. Okay, let's start here. Before we can understand why this moment that I showed you felt so painful, it helps to go back and look at what this relationship seemed to represent for Fabian.
I want to meet my partner and get married. So if I meet somebody on the other side of that wall that's a good match, that's all I want. There's a possibility I won't have to be alone for the rest of my life.
When Fabian says that there's a good possibility that he may not have to be alone for the rest of his life, I hear both hope and fear in that moment. He's clearly very nervous, and underneath that may be a fear of being alone for the rest of his life, as well as struggling with loneliness. That tells me this means a great deal to him. It seems to represent something much bigger, the hope that love may truly be possible and that he may not have to face his future on his own. So next, Fabian and Ellen are talking about travel, and Fabian says this.
I really want to share that moment with somebody.
Yeah.
And it seems almost impossible for me to not think Ellen could be there. I don't want to push you to make a decision. You might feel like I'm too much.
No, never think that you're too much.
Okay.
Never.
Fabian is beginning to imagine a life with Ellen. He's talking about travel, but it seems to carry more meaning than just simple travel for him. Given that he traveled after the abrupt loss of his parents when he was only 18, which I will talk more about later in this video, travel may hold deeper emotional meaning for him. But in this moment, what stands out to me is that we see hope. He seems to be allowing himself to imagine possibility, and my sense is that this may feel especially significant for him. When he says he does not want to be too much, that really stood out to me as well. I don't know exactly what he means by that, but I do wonder if he has had the experience of feeling like his emotions or his inner world are too much for other people. When someone says that they do not want to be too much, it often suggests they may have learned to experience their emotional depth as a burden rather than something to be understood. Some people are born with a sensitive temperament, which means that they tend to feel life and emotions more deeply, more intensely. Obviously, I don't know if that is the case for Fabian, but if he does have a sensitive temperament, people who grow up with a sensitive temperament often feel misunderstood and can start to believe that they are too much when in reality they may simply have a rich and deeper felt inner world.
Hello.
Hi.
Who's there?
It's Ellen.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Fabian. How are you?
It's good.
It's good.
It's
That's
cool.
nice.
You?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm going to drink some water.
Yeah.
It's been a long day.
And now we know not only is he seeing hope, but we are seeing just how emotionally meaningful this is becoming for him. He is experiencing intense excitement here, but it feels bigger than simple excitement. It seems to come from finally allowing himself to believe that something he deeply longs for may actually be possible.
I can't believe it. The feelings I'm having for Ellen are coming so easily. She really takes me in, and that lets me open up and be myself in all the ways that I am. And that's something I've been looking for my entire life.
Given that we know what is coming, it is hard to watch him be so happy and excited. He seems to feel seen, emotionally safe, and free to be fully himself. He seems to feel accepted for who he is, which makes what happens next even more heartbreaking. And when he says that he has been wanting this his entire life, to feel this way, that tells me that this moment is touching something much deeper in him. This is not just about liking someone or feeling excited about a new relationship. It seems to be stirring a deeper longing to feel chosen, safe, and loved in the way that he has wanted for a very long time. That is part of why what happens at the reveal feels so devastating. And I'll tie all of this together so that we can better understand the deeper layers of why this ending hurt him so deeply.
But today's the day that I get to meet Ellen, so I'm really happy.
The most important thing for me is to feel that I'm where I'm supposed to be. But it'll be so nice to hug the person I've shared this crazy experience with.
I feel like we've been here for years, so I can't wait anymore.
Let's talk about how even here they already seem to be in very different emotional places. When Ellen says that she wants to feel that she is where she is supposed to be, it makes me wonder, even though she said yes to Fabian's proposal, if she was still uncertain at the time that she said yes to his proposal. And when she says she wants to hug this person she has shared this crazy experience with, what stands out to me is that I don't hear love in her statement. I hear appreciation for the experience, but not the same depth of emotional attachment that Fabian seems to be experiencing. So for him, on the other hand, he seems to be in a very different place. When he says that it feels like he has been there for years, that likely speaks to how much hope and excitement he has been living in. When we deeply long for something and it finally starts to feel close, time can feel stretched. So even in this moment, they already seem to be standing in two very different emotional realities.
Hi!
Wow.
How are you?
Oh my God, you're so beautiful.
Ellen's excitement and the way that she hugs him likely gives Fabian the message that she is meeting him in the same emotional place that he is in. That is part of what makes what happens next feel so damaging. The pain is not only in the rejection itself, but in how suddenly the emotional reality shifts. One moment he experiences that they are sharing the same joy, and the next moment, all of that disappears. That kind of abrupt emotional whiplash can feel like being punched in the gut before you ever saw it coming.
With all my heart. Will you marry me?
It's beautiful. So beautiful.
You can see that Fabian is sensing that something is wrong with Ellen. His body seems to be reacting before there are even words for what is happening. He begins to twitch, which tells me that he may already be feeling the impact of something shifting. Sometimes the body picks up on change before the mind can fully catch up, and this moment feels like that to me.
I don't think I'm ready.
I was so moved when Fabian reached up to touch her arm, while at the same time he was being blindsided and deeply hurt. There is something especially heartbreaking about that moment when he is already in such a vulnerable position down on one knee, and then in that very moment when he's most open and happy and excited and full of hope, everything changes. That kind of pain can be deeply destabilizing because there is no time to emotionally prepare. One moment he is fully inside of the joy of what he believes is going to happen, and the next, that reality is gone. And because of what we know about his story, that triggered something even deeper, a deeper layer of pain in him, which I will talk about in a moment.
I thought I was. And I really wish that I could be, but I don't think I am. It happened too fast. You said you were in love, and I couldn't say the same. And then I realized that if you're doing this, you must be.
I get it.
Yes.
I don't know why Ellen seemed to have a moment of clarity in that very moment. It's not like she had time for reflection. So it's hard to take in her words, especially thoughtful or even deeply understood. My sense is that she may have been uncertain for longer than that moment, at least to some degree. And if that's true, then saying yes to a marriage proposal becomes much more significant because there is another person whose heart is being affected by that choice. Even if Ellen never intended to hurt Fabian, she hurt him deeply. I will say more about Ellen when I talk about the reunion in a moment. Before I say more about this breakup, stay with me because I am going to show you why this cut so much deeper for Fabian. But first, do you remember when Ellen said this?
I feel like you've been so incredibly... You didn't want to pressure me, but it's a pain in the ass not knowing. Uncertainty's the worst. It makes you panic.
So when Ellen talked about uncertainty and how it can lead to panic, that stood out to me, and even more after we saw her sort of panic at the reveal. Ellen talks as if she is familiar with uncertainty, and that has made her panic in the past. But here's the thing, insight alone is not always enough. Ellen can know that uncertainty is hard for her and still become overwhelmed by it in the moment. And when that happens for her, she may move quickly to get out of her own discomfort without fully taking in the impact that she is having on another person, in this case, Fabian.
It's okay.
No, I don't want you to be sad. It went a little too fast for me.
To say I don't want you to be sad is extremely invalidating and a big ask in that moment, like he was experiencing with her. When you have just taken someone from intense hope and excitement into a deeply destabilizing rejection, sometimes people say things like they don't want you to be sad because they are struggling to tolerate the pain, guilt, or discomfort that they know that they are causing to another person. Rather than making space for the other person's very understandable emotions, they try to move out of those feelings way too quickly because they themselves cannot bear them from the other person.
Can I give you a hug?
Yes, please. It was so wonderful.
I'm sorry.
You don't have to say you're sorry. You don't have to say it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being so honest.
My sense of Fabian is that he seems to be a genuinely kind person, though of course I cannot know that for sure. And I have no doubt that in this moment he is barely able to process what is happening. So when he thanks her for being honest, I do not think that necessarily means he is fully taking in the meaning of what just happened. My sense is that his first instinct is to be kind even while he is being deeply hurt. And at the same time, I wonder whether he is able in that moment to recognize that her actions are not a reflection of his worth. The conclusion he seems to draw, which I will show you at the end of this video, tells me that he may be turning this pain back onto himself in a negative way. And that would be such a disservice to him, because someone else's uncertainty, panic, or inability to hold a painful moment with care does not mean there is something wrong with him. If you notice, Fabian is holding his heart, and there is something so sad about that. Rejection is not just emotionally painful. The brain can register it in the same way it registers physical pain, which is part of why heartbreak can feel so overwhelming and so physical at the same time. In a moment like this, you can see that he is not only emotionally shattered, he seems to be feeling that pain through his whole body, which is why it is even more crushing to watch. Now, here is the reason this cut deeper for him.
I lost my parents in an accident when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
That was really rough. But yeah, I lost my mom and dad, and that was very traumatic.
When I watched this moment for the first time, I felt that Fabian was not only experiencing the pain of what just happened with Ellen, but also reliving the emotions connected to the abrupt and devastating loss of his parents. Let me explain. Fabian experienced a traumatic loss at 18 years old. Losing your parents is devastating at any age, and losing them suddenly makes that loss even more shattering and traumatizing. At 18, there is also something especially painful about it, because that is such an important transition point in one's life. It's a time when many people still need steady guidance and support and emotional presence of their parents as they transition into adulthood. And what can happen after a traumatic loss like that is that losses that you experience at any point in your life after the loss of his parents feels heavier than the loss in front of you, because it awakens that pain of your earlier loss. So a moment like this with Ellen may not have only hurt because of what was happening in the present. It may also have touched that older traumatic loss underneath it. In that way, he may be feeling two emotional pains at the same time: the pain of this heartbreak and the pain of that original sudden loss being stirred up again. And keep in mind that this experience with Ellen was also sudden, unexpected, and an abrupt loss. So the body can feel it in the same way that he felt the traumatic, unexpected loss of his parents. That's why he held his heart. He was feeling this in a heavier way than he likely even understood himself. That's why I cried for him, because I felt the pain of his present and his past all in one moment. Okay, let's talk about the reunion, and then I will finish this with the takeaway I wish Fabian had held on to instead of the one he seemed to draw.
When you went into this experiment, what were your hopes?
To meet my partner, to get married, to have children. Just like if you know that this experiment has truly delivered, that there's actual proof that people can meet someone and then be happy for the rest of their lives.
So Fabian is essentially saying that his hopes and dreams were not unrealistic, because people have come through this show, fallen in love, and gone on to build a life together. The host then asked him what he liked about Ellen, and something he said jumped out at me.
I feel very secure. It gives me the security to be myself, to show that weak side I always try to hide. So we see it, and it's very, very emotional. I talk a lot about my background and my from the past. I felt very secure being myself in every possible way, with all my shortcomings and my strengths. So I have a lot of hope.
When Fabian says that he always tries to hide his weak side and that we saw it in how emotional he was, what that tells me is that he seems to experience his emotional world as a weakness and a burden to others, as I suggested earlier. And without even going into all the reasons why, especially as a man, it can feel so hard to show emotion, what he is really pointing to here is vulnerability. He is someone who is able to be vulnerable when he feels safe with another person. And as much as he calls that part of himself weak, I do not think he actually wants it to be hidden. I think he wants that part of him to be seen, loved, and accepted for who he is as a person. He is also communicating that he felt safe with Ellen, which makes this even more heartbreaking, because just after allowing that vulnerable part of himself to come forward, he was deeply hurt. Experiences like that can teach a person the painful lesson to hide more, to feel less, and to not let anyone see that tender part of themselves again. The truth is that his vulnerability is part of what makes him so appealing. Yes, vulnerability can lead to hurt, but the answer is not to abandon it. The answer is to learn how to care for yourself when you are hurt and still remain true to who you are. And who Fabian seems to be is emotional in all directions, in pain, in hope, in longing, and in excitement. And that is not weakness. That is a deeply feeling heart. And I hope that it is something he continues to embrace in himself.
You get engaged and then you see each other for the very first time. And that meeting, well, neither you nor any of us who witnessed it will ever forget, because it was, incredibly painful.
It looks like I was not alone and experienced this as incredibly painful to watch. I imagine many of you felt that same heartbreak watching it as well.
Ellen, tell us, what did you feel right then and there?
No, but honestly, it was just incredibly difficult, and it was the absolute worst possible moment for a gut feeling to kick in. And I think you can see from my entire body that I really, really want to say yes. And I believe that if this had happened just a few years ago, I would have gone completely against that gut feeling.
Ellen is framing this as part of her growth. She seems to be saying that she is trying to learn to listen more closely to her gut feelings and trust them. The deeper issue, though, is that personal growth is not only about listening to your inner voice. It is also about how you carry that truth when another person is affected by it.
But that just wasn't the case. Instead, you absolutely have to be truly in love. And I couldn't manage to express it in the limited time we had when we were there. It was absolutely dreadful to watch when looking back on it. But somehow I am still proud that I got the chance to find that inner strength to do it in that very moment and not prolong it, not deceive anyone. Be honest about how it truly felt right then. That's the only thing you can do, and it's the only thing you owe other people.
I can respect that Ellen may have felt that she needed to be honest and trust her gut in that moment, but being honest does not mean we stop taking into consideration how that honesty feels for another person. Honesty and compassion need to go hand in hand. We can tell our truth and still hold someone's heart with care. And when someone is as vulnerable, hopeful, and emotionally open as Fabian was in that moment, that care matters even more. And just to be clear, I am not suggesting that Ellen is responsible for Fabian's trigger around the death of his parents in the moment at the reveal. I am simply saying that when our choices deeply affect another person, honesty matters, but so does having some awareness of how those choices may impact another person. We are not responsible for another person's past wounds, but we are responsible for how we handle their heart in that moment. So next, Ellen answers the question, why not move on and date Fabian even when you knew you were not going to get married? And this is what she says.
No, because it just became too pressured and too stressful. It became far too much. It became simply too big, and for me, it just didn't feel right. I wanted so very much for it to work out, but it simply didn't. And then it wouldn't have been fair to Fabian, and it wouldn't have been fair to me either. A fantastic, truly fantastic man, but not my man.
So I really wish that Ellen had taken this opportunity and extend empathy and compassion to Fabian. What stands out to me is that she seemed to stay more in a defensive posture. When I see this moment as an opportunity to hold both, she can hold her truth and also acknowledge the pain Fabian experienced. Those two things can exist together. She could have said something like, Fabian, I saw your pain and you did not deserve that. I realized that being honest with myself and with you was important, but I also wish that I had done a better job of acknowledging how deeply painful that moment was for you. I know your hopes were crushed in that moment, and I am truly sorry that you were so hurt by me in that process. You did not deserve that, and I genuinely hope that you find the love that you so clearly deserve. The reason that would have mattered is because empathy does not erase her truth. It simply shows that she is able to take in the impact of her actions on another human being. And that is what felt missing here to me. And finally, this is the takeaway that Fabian took from this experience.
I have to be strong. Always. Love? What is love? Well, I don't know. Maybe love's not for me. Maybe not.
This is what I would say to Fabian. Fabian, it is not that love is not for you. It is that Ellen was not for you. You deserve someone who will love you as you are, cherish your vulnerability, and hold your heart with care. This heartbreak says nothing about your worth or your lovability. It only tells you that this connection was not the one that was meant for you. Okay, that is a wrap for today. Thank you so much for watching. I will continue to react to Love is Blind Sweden, so stay tuned. See you next time.